Hey, what's going on, everybody? Andrew here, back for our build review show. It is Friday, May 30th of 2025, and on this show, I bring users builds up on stream, giving them personalized feedback and advice about things I think that they can do differently in their builds to ultimately help them build and submit stronger lineups into their contests and also improve their post-contest sim ROIs. So we do this show once a week. We do this show on Fridays at 5 p.m. Eastern. If you ever want to get signed up for a show, two ways to do so. Number one, send us an email, support@sabersim.com. Or number two, post in the office hours channel in Discord. Let me know the following information. Let me know what date, what sport, what site and slate you want reviewed. So that would just look something like, hey, Andrew, can you review my DraftKings MLB main slate lineups from May 29th, Thursday? If you give me that information, should be all I need. If I need anything else, I will be sure to follow up and ask. But that's how you get signed up for the show. For today's show, we did have one user signed up today. It is going to be Jamie, and we're going to be reviewing their lineups from the 527 MLB main slate over on DK. So that would be Tuesday. So let's get that pulled up. Let's get Tuesday's MLB main slate up on the screen. And I do have Jamie pulled up already. So we're going to jump over to the contest tab and start here as usual. All right. So it looks like they played the $1.20 max. This is a good contest to play. I don't think that their contest selection is of concern at all here. I think this is a very good contest. So let's jump into this contest and let's go over to users. And we are going to filter for people who max entered, sort by sim ROI. All right. So negative 2.9% sim ROI. Now look, highest sim ROIs in this contest are honestly somewhere above even. So they are like just on the cusp here of like right outside the top 10 to 20%, 10 to 20, maxers here. They're really not that far down on the list. There is some room for improvement though. So we will try and figure out what we can find about their lineup sets and see what they can possibly do different next time. So this was a big slate. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 game slate. Let's see some of their underlying metrics. Average salary, 49.6, pushing 49.7. No dupes. 98 sim average score here. Now, even if you look at like some of the top players, the sim average scores are kind of all over the place, right? 102, 101, 99. We see 98. We see 96. We see 97. So none of their metrics look kind of out of whack. Nothing like right off the bat that says like, this seems like a bad play or anything like that. So that's a good thing that we don't see anything like that. So since we don't see anything kind of clear, something I like to do is just come in and look at their exposures from the contest. I'm going to edit some of this. Let's reset this to default. Let's take out this. Let's put in that. So I'm just trying to manage this so I could understand what's going on a little bit better. All right. So let's start with pitchers. We sort by pitchers here. Where's their exposure? And let's filter for them. Okay, so as far as pitcher exposure goes, most of their exposure was to the higher value pitchers here, right? Cade Horton, Carlos Rodon. And then they did have some exposure to some of these lower value pitchers, but still, these guys still have decent ownership with like Hunter Brown, Joe Ryan, double-digit ownership. So basically, most of their exposure here was all to double-digit owned pitchers here and kind of like the highest owned and then kind of scale it down. So this all seems fine what they did over here on the pitcher side. Now, so their batter exposures are pretty interesting, right? Pretty aggressive, in my opinion here, right? 55% Abrams, 55% Hassel, 50% Lyle. I'm pretty sure these are like the 189 hitters. Let's check this out. 179. Sorry, 179. So just a ton of exposure to basically Washington. Looks like they took a huge stand here. I'm not sure if they did this intentionally or not. Seemed like the builder maybe disagrees with this slightly. Maybe it's just a little too much, right? We always talk about you got to compare your leverage on players, right? These players had very low ownerships, right? 2% projected, 5% actual, 2% projected, 4% actual, 6% projected, 7% actual, right? So when you're getting 50%, you're getting 9x the field, right? You're getting 8 to 9x the field. You know, this is very, very aggressive, right? You would want to be very convicted about these plays if you're going to roster them at like such a high rate. Now, general recommendations here are try and be closer to like 2 to 3x the field, especially with batters, right? I've studied other top users in MLB before, and one thing I've seen is that their batter leverage is usually floating closer to like plus or minus 10%. That's just like a general thing I've seen, but I've seen it from some of the top sim ROIers. So that's something to keep in mind here, right? I even think like, you know, if you want to be plus or minus 10% or 2 to 3x a player's like their exposure compared to their ownership, right? So like for Abrams, you know, he's projected for like 6%. Yeah, 6-ish%. Maybe you get to like 20% max. For Hassel, he's like 3%. So maybe you get, I don't know, maybe even like 5x with some of these guys, you know, maybe even closer to like 15%, right? Where you're still getting leverage on them. You're just not so overly exposed to them. So we did an interview with one of our Millie Maker winners. It was Elusive Smoke. And he said something that always kind of stuck with me. He's like, you know, you don't need 50% of a 1% owned player. You could get 10% of them, and then you still have way more shares than the field does, and you still have way more shots on goal when that player does good. But they're obviously 1% for a reason, right? Because they're probably riskier. So just don't allocate too much of your portfolio to those plays. So that's a little bit paraphrasing what he was trying to say, but I always kind of think about that, and that's coming from like a top pro. So here, right, I would be a lot more careful with my exposures being so aggressive toward these players. That's probably the biggest thing I'm seeing at the moment. Aside from that, let's actually go into a build and see what decisions were made here. So let's load up this build one. Another thing I do want to mention, it's not something you have to do, but it could be a good thing, right, is to late swap at some point on this slate. Now, me personally, what I would probably recommend is notice that there are 1, 2, 3, 4 games that start. This is Pacific time at this like 6:40/9:40 Eastern window. And all the other games started within an hour of each other, right? Well, you kind of have a good opportunity to take advantage of the live data and the live projections and how players have done to this point in the slate for all the other games that are going on before the last 4 games of the night get underway, right? This will help you to say, if you have lineups that are doing good, how do we further optimize them to get to the top of your contest? If you have lineups that are doing bad, how do we change the players to maybe get to a different set of players that can help you get some min cash equity back, right? So we have live ownership for DraftKings for the contest. We have live projections that update every half inning. So mixing in a late swap at some point in the slate is a way of getting more edge, and it can be really impactful, right? So I would recommend a late swap probably in this window here. It is going to vary slate to slate. It's a bit subjective, but it is something I want to put on your radar, where even if no players are ruled out, even if all the lineups are confirmed, a late swap can still help you to get better results in your contest when it's all said and done, right at the end of the day. All right. So let's get into this build. Looks like default settings, no rules, no filters, no salary adjustments, no batter or no exposure adjustments in the all tab. Looks like just the 2 required updates to projections to unlock your build. Nothing in batters. Nothing in pitchers. Nothing in any of the individual positional tabs, which is good. Nothing in stack exposures. Nothing in games. Nothing in teams so far. So pretty hands-off build, I would say, all things considered so far. Now let's look in direct fill. So we do see 4 uniques. We see target ROI. Now, a lot of this looks good. A lot of this is like pretty hands off. Where I would consider maybe making some changes is, what can you do here? So what I would probably do is, like, you have your exposure and your pool over here. I would also bring over this leverage column just to give you a pretty good idea of like the big stands that you're taking. It just makes it make a little bit more sense when you see it all together. So it doesn't really matter where on the page this is. But I think what you could do is just try and group your ownership, your exposure, and your leverage together so you can closer or like more closely keep an eye on how big these leverages are getting, right? And then me, when I go through my MLB lineups, I mostly go through them kind of separately. I look at the all batters and then I look at the pitchers. And then as I'm going through and making adjustments to my uniques and things like that, I'm really closely watching this leverage in the all batters, because this is the one that I think you need to get spread out the most with, right? And you don't want to be too concentrated at any point. So here, right, I'm at 5 uniques. I still have positive ROI, but some of these leverages are still really, really high, right? And they're to those Washington players that we were talking about earlier. So because these leverages are so high, I would go even higher, right? As long as I'm staying, my ROI is staying positive, I want to continue to manage my risk. And it isn't until we get to like 6 uniques where these players start to drop. Right now, Washington, their highest exposed player is 25%, even though we still have leverage. I just think maybe we didn't diversify enough, and we should consider diversifying more. Another thing that you can do here, right, to help with this, to help yourself make sure you're not going too far with any of these adjustments, is put on an ROI greater than 0 filter. What this will do is it will take out all the negative ROI lineups and only leave you the positive ones. Here it took out 3,100 lineups, leaves 2,100. Now, no matter how far I go, right, I know that all of these lineups are going to be positive, and I'm never going to dip my toes into the negative ROI lineups, right? So lineup at mini uniques of 7, we're only at lineup 135, right? If you want to go further, great, you can. But it really all comes down to just managing your risk. And at a mini uniques of 7, we start to see no batter projected in more than 25% of our lineups, which is way, way lower than where we were of like 55% to some of these players, right? So even 6, right, it seems good. One player at 30, other players at 25 or below. So I just think we need to diversify a little bit more. Try using this ROI filter to make sure you don't go into negative ROI lineup territory. And I think if you just make the ROI filter change, group your exposure leverages together, even your ownership, if you want to compare side by side, this will help you to better manage your exposures. And in turn, I think it's going to end up helping you to have better post-contest sim ROIs, not take such huge stands where, your top 3 batter exposures all get 0 because batters are super high variance. So I think that this should help a lot. So couple small changes, but again, you were pretty close to positive ROI, pretty close to the top. It kind of sometimes all you need are a couple small changes to really right the ship and get going in the right direction. All right. Good stuff there. Happy to knock that one out. I think that one's going to be super helpful. That was our only build review today. If you guys ever want to get signed up for the show, let me know. Email us, support@sabersim.com, post in office hours. Just shoot us a message. Hey, Andrew, can you review my MLB main slate lineups from DraftKings for Friday, May 30th as an example? We do all sports as long as we have flashback data for them, and we can get a review done. But appreciate you guys tuning in. I'll be back tomorrow, 12:30 p.m. Eastern for office hours. So until then, everybody, take care. Good luck. Thanks. Bye.